My name is David Decker. I'm Head of Education in ANZ, and I am very pleased that we have you all in this meeting. The meeting is being recorded, so we can send it to you afterwards. There's no need to send out the slides. You'll have the slides and the wordings around it. We have muted the audience just to make sure that there's no background noise. If you want to ask a question, it's best to use the chat box, and we can. I'll moderate that. It is only a 1 hour session. We have had 3 sessions prior to this as a live event when we had 2 hours. So I will keep the introduction short and hand over to Mirko Watala instantly. I'd say he's the global solution owner for SAP Enable Now, and I'm flew in from Berlin. So really pleased that he is here. And with that, I'd like to hand over to him. He will talk for about half an hour, and then hand over to Shane Lipke, one of our own solution architects, who will show you the use of Enable Now. But first, over to Mirko Watala.
Thanks, David, and welcome also from my side. As mentioned, my name is Mirko, and I'm normally located in Berlin, so I'm quite happy to be here now in Sydney. And I've been asked to speak about why SAP Enable Now matters. So I'm with the solution now since 11 years, so it matters a lot to me personally, and I'm quite happy to see how the solution actually has developed over the time and is now being integrated into SAP systems. But rather, I decided to give you a short insight why Enable Now actually matters for SAP. So in 2016, Bill stated that everything has to start with the empathy for the end user and the experience they're getting from SAP. So and that actually was just a big game changer for SAP customers and especially end users, as it was not only about a new user interface, so turning transactions into single page-based applications, but it's also changing, actually there's a paradigm change on user enablement to take care from the very first moment. So why actually SAP is doing that? For a clear and obvious reason. It's about becoming a cloud company and providing cloud software. Customers will get updates more frequently, and end users actually have to adopt the new features instantly. So that's quite important from the very first minute. So that's why it actually needs that paradigm change also in the learning world. So not only in providing standard training possibilities, but also new ways like in-application help that is actually already embedded, comes for free, including default content. And this is actually where SAP Enable Now also comes into the game. So, but just let's have a look back. For those who might not know, SAP Enable Now originally, like I think 7 years ago, has been acquired by SAP. So as a standalone solution to allow customers to create their own enablement materials by using Enable Now. And what we have actually, what we were faced within SAP, so more and more people approached us and asked us, can I use SAP Enable Now for my project? We have that kind of projects where we need kind of enablement, kind of knowledge that has to be shared. And I would like to give you a little insight on what we have done within SAP, because I think that actually meets exactly customer situations as well, because quite often it starts with a project. And just to give you a little insight on how it started here. So in 2013, actually, the learning group approached us and asked us, okay, now that we have the tool SAP Enable Now, can we use it to create a mandatory curricular-based trainings to courseware to be rolled out to the SAP audience? So the answer to that was, yeah, for sure you can. And so we set up a project, and what has been developed is, I'll just give you, among other things, just a short idea here, that is actually our security training that has been rolled out to all SAP members some years ago. And here it's just about how to keep the workplace secure and so on. And for me, I was quite happy to see now Enable Now content that is distributed to all SAP employees, of course. And that case actually meets as well customer situations, because the content has been created by using SAP Enable Now, and finally it has been imported via SCORM into the SuccessFactors learning management system to be rolled out to all SAP employees. So another example, actually, this is something we have created on our own. That is actually the Info Center, and we have an SAP internal Info Center, and since 2 years we have also an Info Center that is available to all of our customers. So you can easily go there and register yourself as an SAP Enable Now customer. And to speak a little bit about the challenges we had originally within SAP. So a lot of people approach us, hundreds and thousands of people, and ask, can we use Enable Now? How actually do I install the software? How can I use the software? Where do I find which material? And that is why we have decided, okay, we need to share, we need to scale our knowledge in a more efficient way than before. So let's just use our very own tool and compare it to the security training what you've seen. This is about informal learning. So we just provided the Info Center. It's activated by SSO, so any SAP employee can access that quite easily. And so the whole page, what you can see here now, has been created by SAP Enable Now, and the content actually is hosted on our cloud edition. And it started, the Info Center started some years ago with that link collection. So because a lot of people reached us out, where can I find which information within the SAP universe? And so we decided, okay, just let's collect the links, and by clicking on the link, you will be guided to the respective page. So that might be helpful for our customers as well. And if you're a customer and maybe you don't know yet about the Info Center, I highly can recommend to register to our newsletter under the Stay Tuned section. So that means, like, once you have registered yourself, you will get proactive updates whenever we're providing a new release, and providing, of course, all the important information around that release. So like release notes, interactive training material, whatever is required to adopt the latest solution. So in addition, we put in a lot of knowledge around the product itself. So that means, like, let's imagine you're a SAP customer, you have done the training course for SAP Enable Now, but finally, as a content developer, I'm working with a solution. So, but I have a question, for instance, on how actually I can create quizzes. How can I actually add audio to my simulation, to my content? And that's actually what the Info Center is for. So it's a reference library, so you can just access learning material, explaining a functionality a little bit more in detail. And yeah, and as we're recommending to our customers, the Info Center is directly linked and available from within our products. So creating content with a component which is called Producer, you can just, by having a click on a button, you will be just guided to the Info Center. So, and this is actually on how the informal learning is directly connected to the product. So another one what we have added here, and especially to new customers, I'm recommending that area because that is everything about content and templates. So because for good reason we are shipping the product without any templates, because almost any customer is going to adapt the template according to their CI. So that means we have decided to not deliver them by default, but you can make use of them from the Info Center. So maybe just let's have some ideas what this is about. For instance, avatars. If you would like to use avatars within your product, you can download them here for free and to be imported into your SAP Enable Now instance. If you want to have that kind of books with actions, quizzes, you can go directly here. You can have a look on how actually that quiz has been designed. You can download that, adapt it easily to a corporate design, and then to roll it out to your audience. Another one here is about books with actions. So as you can see, here numerous material and templates are provided. And actually the content creation in SAP Enable Now is highly template driven. So that means in advance, I would recommend just create your templates, make use of what we are providing here to be adapted in your world, more to come quite soon, in order to set up a sustainable knowledge production scenario. So, and just to have it mentioned, the Info Center, now that it's out there since 2 years externally, we have about I would say about 12,000 unique users collecting that time, and per day there are 200 to 300 or 400 users enabling themselves by using the info center information. So yeah, we're quite happy for that approach, and by doing so, actually, of course, it reduced the amount of support tickets a lot, and even SAP internally, the amount of requests we get every day. And if we get a request, we simply send a link to the respective page and say, okay, have fun in enabling yourself. And most often that helps a lot, so people do not come back. So that is quite efficient. All right, then another example is about the solution experience. That is actually a group within SAP who are responsible to create content for pre-sales guys. So let's imagine you're a pre-sales guy and you have to do a presentation maybe by the next day. So they ask us, okay, is there something Enable Now can do for us? The answer was yes. So that means like every presentation package now actually has a mandatory Enable Now package in addition, which enables first a pre-sales guy on how to do a demo. And even if a pre-sales guy does not have access to the latest target system, might it be not released yet, they can easily access the Enable Now presentation modes to go through the processes and yeah, to be presented externally and internally likewise. So that was just a very good example and quite interesting scenario for us. Another one, what I like really a lot, is about the SAP Mobile Bootcamp, and that actually shows that everything starts with a good idea. So any kind of learning, training, knowledge approach starts with a good idea. In that case, a guy with an SAP approached me and said, okay, here's actually the task to create a page and enablement for external developers who want to create mobile apps by using SAP. So he was, of course, thinking first of writing extended documentation and providing a lot of textual description, but actually mentioned that is not that scalable. So finally, the outcome is this is the mobile interactive tutorial page. So let's imagine you're an external developer. You will just enter the page. The page itself does not has nothing to do with Enable Now, but me as an external developer, I can now start to create my first mobile app by using SAP. I'm going to choose on which platform actually I'm going to develop. Is it iOS, Android? And finally, I will be guided to the next page where I can download the SDK, the development environment, in order to create my mobile app. So I have everything what is provided here. And now normally I would have to read a lot of documentation, but actually this is the difference here. What you can see is just an interactive guide, an interactive simulation that has been embedded on that page, and that is actually Enable Now content. So it's not rocket science, it's just a simulation, but it comes embedded on that page. And actually it starts directly after the download of the zip file of the SDK. So I can simply follow now that step-by-step procedure, and by following it, it is not just about learning, but actually already performing my action on my machine. So that means like, okay, finally at the end of this tutorial, I will go to the next one, so to the intermediate tutorial. But finally, once I'm done, I've not only learned on how to create an app by using SAP, but I've already developed my very first app on my own by just following those embedded guides here. So another one is like, there might be customers who are using Solution Manager. So you might have seen that already. I just wanted to give you an idea on how flexible the solution is. Because what you might know, for those who know Solution Manager, are using Solution Manager, there are substantial changes from Solution Manager 7.1 to 7.2. And actually the Solution Manager group approaches us to say, okay, they have seen the Info Center and they want to create something similar, which they call the Media Center. So that is available for free for the audience as well. So that means like if you're a Solution Manager customer, you can go there to access the content, to get an idea of what has changed. And that example is just showing everything's template driven. So that means like, okay, you can highly customize any kind of content according to your needs. So they have decided to go that way, and yeah, that is actually provided in addition, and covering the same case for informal learning for the Solution Manager update. So and finally, when talking about the paradigm change within SAP that is ongoing with regards to user enablement and onboarding, I want to come to S4HANA. Just having, let's open the system here. And I'm using the subfurytry.com system, so that means that is enabled, so you do not even need to register, you can access that for free. Just Google for SAP Try, so you can access the very same system. So it's not a lot of content provided here, but actually it provides a good idea on what this is about. So let's imagine you're going to buy S/4HANA, and once clicking the question mark, which is already enabled by default, at least for the cloud edition, you will get what we call the web assistant. So it's an overlay on top of the screen which provides me with helpful information, most important that they are provided in the context, the time of need. So that means like you can even provide a little knowledge nuggets. You do not need to provide extensive documentation, because here everything is about performance support, helping the user to become more efficient while working with the system. So I can either click here down on the carousel on the tile to get an additional information. On the other side, I have that hotspots here on top. And hotspot, of course, is indicating that help is available for. And by clicking on it, I can access that kind of information shown on that bubble. Here in that case, text information is shown. Of course, you can insert any image, videos that are streamed directly within that kind of bubble, links to further information. And of course, the contextual help is especially helpful in explaining, let's say, new or updated functionality. So when it comes to change management, or just to provide further helpful information in addition. So another mode is about the guided tours. So they can be started from within the carousel. It can be even assigned with an app to be started automatically. And as the name already says, okay, that example is not that extensive here, but I think you get the idea. And as the name already states, a guided tour is guiding the user step by step through a certain application process. So I would say, okay, this is maybe not that important for a subject matter expert who knows quite a lot about the processes, but let's say there are new processes, or you have changed existing processes, or there are processes people are just using quite rarely, like once or 2 times a year, so that guided tool becomes quite helpful to guide the user through the respective application process. So, and I think that is so interesting because within SAP we have experienced the very same situation as I've seen quite often on customer side. So most often it starts with a project. So let's say you have to roll out a new application, so it might be success factors. That means in that moment your need is focused on that project to enable your end users in using the new software, the new processes. And that's actually where Enable Now comes normally into the game. So people, the project group starts to create content to be rolled out along with the application rollout. But more and more often, actually, customers are seeing, okay, looking forward, what actually can Enable Now do with regards to other departments, other projects, and finally going the direction from the project-driven approach to a strategic-driven approach to implement a large enterprise knowledge management solution that actually can cover any case. So, and when talking about any case, maybe let's just summarize what we have seen. So it's about formal training, as you have seen, curricular-based training to be rolled out in a mandatory way. So, for instance, in the SuccessFactors learning, but you can use any other LMS here as well. On the other side, it's about informal learning. So, like the Info Center, as you have seen. So, people maybe ask yourself, once you have done mandatory training and you're working with the software, and then finally you have some questions, you will most probably not go back to the learning management system to see, oh, there was some content I can remember to have a look. So that's why actually the informal learning part is quite important in addition here. And finally, as you have seen the web assistant to just to provide the in-application help based on the current context of the application. So for me, actually, but most important here is like, because I have some discussions with customers asking, well, now that you have that kind of performance support capabilities, do I still need formal and informal learning part? So my answer to that is yes, because how would you like to cover compliance-based trainings just having the inner help? So it's about combining each and every approach and delivery scenario, and to be able to react on different drivers for learning needs, like here shown, like the compliance, business, or technology drivers. But let's go back. because I think from my perspective, it's quite important to speak about the content reuse. So let's imagine you have developed some form of training initially that has been provided by a learning management system, curricular based. So, but finally, as mentioned, people are not going back to the learning management system. So why not just using and reuse the very same content, redundancy free, to be provided in addition in the informal learning part. So for instance, in that kind of knowledge library that is provided. In addition, maybe even linked to the application, the same as what we have done with the Info Center. On the other side, why not just providing the very same content also in the performance support component, so the web assistant. So let's say, okay, if you're having created an introduction book to success factors, so why not just showing that book directly up within the app, so the user has the ability to click on a tile and that book is being shown in the context of the application. So there's no media disruption, the user does not have to need to leave the system, but can consume any kind of content directly there as well. So, but let's speak a little bit further about the user assistance in S4HANA, as mentioned, and that is actually about the paradigm change. It is provided, it comes already embedded, it's for free, and there's a lot of default content that is actually provided by SAP. So, on the one side, we have the contextual hub that is being displayed provided via the carousel, what you have seen. So it's currently about 19 languages that are provided and a lot of content that is actually being created within SAP and shipped to the customer by default. The same is about the guided tours. So you will have a lot of guided tours created already by SAP and coming embedded, delivered by default. And the last one that is actually the recent innovation provided last year in November, I think, is about the embedded learning. So there's another group within SAP creating content by using Enable Now. So such kind of learning content, e-learnings, conceptual interactive pages, and so on. And most important, the learning content can be easily accessed as well from within the web assistant by using that learning center tile. Once the user is clicking on that tile here, actually it opens up. It is checking the current context of the application, so getting an understanding which app currently is being used by the user to only provide suitable information based on the current context. So here the very same, the user, there's no media disruption, the user does not have the need to search for content, everything is just provided in real time based on the current context of the application. So, and that is actually the paradigm change again, like content is being created by SAP, so it's saving you a lot of time and efforts and money. You do not have to create that initial content, but it comes in a delightful way already embedded with the system. So on the other side, this is exactly what customers are expecting when talking about cloud, because, okay, you have to drive the adoption on your side as well, but now SAP is taking care of that initially. Of course, we're receiving quite often the question from customers, well, I like that content provided by default, but is there any way to adapt, to customize, to extend that kind of content that is provided? So the answer to that is yes, of course, and you can do so by using SAP Enable Now. That means once we have, for instance, S4HANA and SAP Enable Now, you will be able to use the extensibility scenario, and the scenario actually includes 3 different cases. The first one is you will be able to change SAP default content. So you can even edit the textual information, you can change the guided tours, or you can even delete a tile or information you think that is not that suitable for your scenario. On the other hand, you can of course create your very own web assistant content. That means like you can create guided tours and contextual help to be added in the tile, and most important, to be shown in addition to the SAP content. So it's actually ending up in a mixed scenario, providing both your custom content and SAP default content that is being updated from SAP side on a regular basis, and yeah, showing them in a mixed scenario. So, and finally, and I think maybe the most important case here is you can even add your own content. So that means like whatever you have, simulations, PDFs, PowerPoints, any kind of information you have, you can link it directly to be displayed in the context of need. So you can use the Web Assistant framework as a context-sensitive content delivery platform. So that means like easily embed your very own help by using the Web Assistant. So currently the web assistant is integrated in S/4HANA, event ticketing, business intelligence, hybrid marketing, and I'm quite happy with the next version. I can already give you a little preview here. But the next version to be delivered, I think, at the end of May latest. We are happy to announce the availability of the web assistant also for success factors. So I just want to give you a short idea on how that looks like, because it's a bit slightly different compared to what you've seen in S/4HANA. So as you can see, the carousel, we have changed the position of the carousel from the horizontal to the vertical view, because we got feedback from customers saying, okay, that's okay, but finally it's sometimes overlapping important application space. So, and as it is responsive, when opening the carousel, we are moving the application to the side. We are not overlapping any application space anymore. And finally, I have the very same, and of course we have changed here the color. So, but finally I have the very same, so I have some hotspots on top of the screen, and actually I can link any kind of content. So, just to show on how that might look like, let's say I've created a book for the formal training that has been rolled out by the LMS. So, and this is the reuse what I meant. That means like, okay, I can easily integrate that kind of book now directly to be shown in the context, in that kind of box, what we call the light box. And again, in that kind of light box, you can just display almost anything. So it might be PDF, whatever you have. Here, for instance, we are running the video. So just to give you a little idea on how that might look like. So, and maybe if we have a little time, yeah, why not giving you the preview on how to edit that content. So let's say, okay, this is SAP default content. I have now entered the edit mode. So, and let's say, okay, let's scroll a little up. Here is something wrong at the end. So I'm going to re-edit this style provided by SAP, and just going to open it now that I'm in the edit mode, going to delete the stuff I don't like, and then clicking on apply, and that's it already. So you can see it's in-app editing capabilities are provided for the web assistant, but maybe to show that, in addition, let's create also a new tile. So you can create guided tours, you can create link tiles, so again, like linking to any kind of content, whatever you have. Or you can create a help tile. This is now what we're going to do. So let's say this is help tile, entering the title, entering a summary, and in the text bubble I can just enter further details, for instance. So clicking on OK, it is directly shown in the carousel, and if I want, if that is not a generic information for the current page, if I want, I can assign that even to a hotspot, and going around to see, like, okay, it's giving me already an indication if that object could be assigned, yes or no. And most important here, I do not need to be a developer. I can easily assign that. I can change the hotspot size, and once I'm clicking on apply, I can save my changed content. And now actually it's saved back on to your SAP Enable Now instance, so not saved back to the SAP server. So all the custom content, of course, is stored in the SAP Enable Now instance. Let's leave the edit mode and just see what we have created. So that tile is now directly being shown within the app. So just to give you that little preview on how that will look like. So finally, I just want to speak about the multimodality of content. As you have seen, like the content, I've mentioned that a couple of times because content reuse is quite important for me. And SAP Enable Now actually is able to cover any kind of use case of learning need that you might have within your company, and most important, in a really efficient way, in a redundancy-free way. That means creating learning or knowledge objects once and to be delivered in different channels, redundancy-free in a really efficient way, and to get the most out of the content of what you have created. So maybe to mention that there are a lot of content creation tools out there, and actually to me creating content has never been the problem. So that is most often quite easy to create any kind of content. But let's imagine when you want to drive knowledge management at high scale, you will have quite fast thousands, 10,000 and even more knowledge objects. And once you have created the content, that content has to be maintained. You have to update the content on a regular basis. You have to translate the content and so on. And that actually, where I see in USP of Enable Now, a lot of tools and possibilities are provided to do so in a very efficient way to keep your knowledge architecture up to date and Yeah. I actually want to close why SAP Enable Now matters. So you just got an idea why it matters for SAP as well. And I think I have 5 minutes left, so maybe just let's speak roughly about the roadmap. So what is coming next, to give you here an idea. So the next release is actually, of course, we're driving further the simplicity of the product, both for content creation and, of course, the content consumption. It's about the accessibility. So Web Assistant is accessible, but we have some work to do for the standard content that will be accessible quite soon. We will take care about our we'll extend our integration to SAP Solution Manager. So there's an integration already provided. So that means like you can easily synchronize your business process structure with SAP Enable Now to be filled up with the content and to be synchronized back to combine both worlds, so the e-learning world and the process world on the other side. So, but we are planning to extend that interface by even further possibilities quite soon. So then it's about responsive content. So by now the content, the standard content, the web assistant as well, can be already be used on PC, Mac, and on tablets. But for our standard content means like the courseware, we want to provide a template-based approach. We have to provide even responsive content to be also consumed on any mobile device. So then we're providing for existing customers, we're providing a database migration from the SQL to HANA, especially for the cloud migration, because so a lot of existing customers are asking us now that we have since 2 years our cloud edition in place, if they can migrate to become a cloud customer. Just be informed, it's possible. Reach out to us by creating a support ticket. Then actually we will now be able to help you with the migration from on-prem to the cloud. So we will take care about new social learning capabilities, so providing possibility to add communication and threads to content, rating content, providing feedback, improve reporting, reporting capabilities for learning and desktop assistant content. So it means like, of course, you want to know where it's actually the in-application app has been opened, who's using it, and so on. So there will be some nice reports provided soon. On the other side, we want to involve more the end user, so we will take care about end user generated content as we have done already, so allowing even end users to create an easy simulation, a documented video that can be easily shared to their peers. We want to move forward further with that direction. GDPR. Actually, I'm not quite sure if that is so important for you, but in the moment you're going to roll out content to Europe, then actually you have to take care of the data protection. And as you might know, this became mandatory now, or will become mandatory at the end of May. So it means like you have to inform your users which data actually is tracked and to allow them to delete and access that kind of data. So that is now provided, or will be provided in the next release as well. Another one, and what I'm really looking forward to, I've briefly spoken about that kind of learning content that is being created within SAP to be provided by default to SAP customers already by now. But even here, we want to provide an extensibility scenario, so to allow you to add even your own tutorials to that learning app, and most important, to customize the existing content here as well. So the same what you can do already by now with the Web Assistant itself. So just to give you an outlook, further direction, we want to integrate Enable Now into the Copilot, which is actually about conversion UI and about automating processes more efficiently in S4HANA and SuccessFactors. I think currently it's will be integrated soon, the Copilot. And by combining both SAP Enable Now and Copilot, you can imagine that kind of synergies. So the users asking the system for some help, or just to create a leave request just by asking. And the Copilot will be then able to even to trigger Web Assistant functionality to show up automatically any kind of SAP Enable Now content. So that would be quite interesting. We're aiming for TinCan support. We got that feedback from a lot of customers to not only provide ACC and SCORM for the LMS, but also TinCan, as it allows more detailed tracking. Then for those customers who are using our desktop system component, which is actually our other in-app help component, which runs not only based on the web or even for sub GUI-based applications or third-party applications. So we want to combine actually to harmonize both. So me as an end user, because currently they have different display concepts, looking different. From the content consumption perspective, and by harmonizing them, it's quite important because me as an end user, I don't care whether this is desktop or web assistant, but I want to have my application hub in a consistent way. Doesn't matter in which application I am. So that will be, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. In addition, we will provide new automations. For instance, we're thinking about providing an interface to the Google speech voices. They are quite good. So let's imagine you've created standard content and you want to put in some audio. You will be able with a click on the button to send that to the Google service and to get back actually your content, including the audio. And the quality is really awesome compared to the, I don't know, to 5-6 years. So I think text-to-speech really works now. And yeah, maybe just have a look and try out those Google Voices. I think they're really of good quality. And on the other side, it's about automated translation. So let's say, okay, you have created content, might it be standard content, might it be web assistant content, you edit your text. Finally, in the moment you have the need to translate it, you can do that already by now within SAP Enable Now. But in addition, we want to provide that automation. So it means like you can send it to the SAP Leonardo service, and finally you just get it back in any kind of language automatically translated. So yeah, and more of those automations are to come. All right, so I think I'm a little bit over time. Shane, I'm sorry, but thank you. Yeah, wish you a nice week. And with that, actually, I want to hand over to Shane. Shane, are you there?
I am, Mirko. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do, folks, is to spend a little bit of time just running you through not future capabilities, but current capabilities. So what I've actually done is I've projected my screen. Hopefully at this point in time you are seeing my screen. And at the moment what you're actually looking at is you're looking at an S4HANA screen. So I'm going to assume at this stage that you can hear me and you can see my S4HANA screen. And I'm going to start by assuming that I'm an end user of the application. So at the moment I'm not a content author and I'm not an administrator of the system. I'm actually a user of this current system, and so I'm going to utilize what's been made available to me to try and actually work my way through the system. So if you look across on the right-hand side of my screen, I'll click a little button across there. Hopefully you can see that. What you'll actually see occur is a little toolbar pop out from the from the right-hand side of the screen. What I can do is click the button again, which pops it away. At any stage, if I want support with SAP Enable Now supported applications like S4HANA, for example, I can open that toolbar and I can access a number of different ways of going about getting support. So during my training, my S4HANA training, which I've long since forgotten, one of the things that the instructor mentioned was that if I get myself stuck at some stage, what I can do is I can open this toolbar and I should look for this light bulb. If this light bulb is glowing, that's an indication that the current screen that I'm looking at actually has content for it. So if I click on that light bulb, what I'm able to do is I'm able to access a window which contains information that has been linked to the current screen. In this instance, what's been linked, and we haven't looked at any of this at this stage, but what's been linked is a simulation and a second object that's actually called a guided tour. So there are two pieces of information at this point in time that have been linked to that current screen. If I actually step into the application, so I actually take an additional step and move forward into the application, what you'll notice is now what we have is a situation where there is actually a third piece of information that's linked to that current screen. So I have the original simulation that was just present a moment ago and the guided tour. But now I also have something that's actually indicating it's a piece of business process information. So I'm able to obviously go ahead and access this piece of business process information. So in this instance, I decide, yes, that's what it is that I want to do. I do actually want to access this piece of business process information. So I'll go ahead and actually launch that. Now, I'm not sure whether you were actually able to hear the audio or not. There is actually audio attached in there as well. But effectively, everything that you see there, and I'm not by any means saying that this is, a great example of, of a business process or how a business process should be represented to your end users. But what I'm saying to you is, SAP Enable Now has really two key capabilities there that you need to understand. One of those is that we can create non-system based information. So this is in no way directly related to the use of the system other than it's an overarching business process. And that piece of information has animation in it. So what I can do is I can, using the capabilities of Enable Now, build effectively full e-learning course type capabilities that can be used to train people. In this instance, I use those capabilities to actually build this document, which could be used to explain to people the new process that's in place in terms of how they actually go about procuring goods and services. So what we've managed to do is we've managed to produce a piece of information, and the only thing I had to produce that piece of information that you just saw is SAP Enable Now and a microphone. Other than that, everything else was effectively built within SAP Enable Now. So I recorded my voice using the microphone. The rest of the information that you saw was all SAP Enable Now. And then I have actually connected that particular piece of information to the current screen so that an end user could, if you remember back to where we started, click on the little toolbar on the right, launch the light bulb, and then you see that that's one of the objects that's actually been connected to the current screen. All right, I'm going to launch the second of the objects, and the second of the objects is a simulation. Now this simulation is actually going to simulate system functionality, or how you go about completing that system functionality. Notice that in this case it's actually playing within a player. This is true multimedia that's playing within a player, so I can pause it, I can go back a step, I can commence the playing process again. And ultimately what the simulation is going to do is it's just going to go through and play and show me, an end user, what it is that I need to do to complete that corresponding transaction. In this instance, it's actually playing in a mode that's called demo mode. What you'll find is simulations within Enable Now can be played in multiple different modes. One of those is demo. A second mode that I'll show you in a moment is called practice mode. And practice mode enables the end user, or requires the end user, to actually perform the actions rather than sitting and watching the actions. So it's far more interactive. A second thing that I want you to note at the moment is, a moment ago we launched this simulation from an S4HANA system, and the initial steps were in S4HANA. Notice now that we've actually transitioned immediately into an Ariba system, and if I start the simulation again, it will go through and complete the remainder of the process, which is to go ahead and complete the pieces of information that are necessary within Ariba. So SAP Enable Now will enable you to record these system transactions, and it is a recording process. So when Mirko talks about rapid content development, a lot of the content that you need to put into place here when it's system-based content starts with a recording process to create all of the structures and the hotspots and the initial instructions and all of that information on which you can then build additional information to make, quality e-learning materials. So that simulation, if I let it run, would just go through to completion. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open the same simulation again in a different way within this window that we see that was connected to Desktop Assistant, or was launched from Desktop Assistant. And what you can see is I can actually launch that same information in multiple other different ways. So in other words, the people who have published this information have made these other alternative ways of consuming that content available to me, the end user, to consume. So in this instance, if I actually click on the practice mode version of the simulations, in this instance, I'll actually end up with exactly the same simulation. It's just that I'm required to actually click on the relevant steps or complete the relevant information to be able to go ahead and complete that simulation. So that's a practice mode simulation, one of the other modes that's actually available for simulations. What I'll do is I'll just launch a single document. There are about 10 or 12 different formats that you can actually launch to present that same information in different ways for different end users or different groups of users. One of those, is obviously a style of information that's called a job help piece of information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and launch that piece of job help information, which has been generated from that same piece of content that we use to demonstrate the two different versions of simulations, the demo mode and the practice mode. And in this instance, what you see a summary set of steps that steps you through the key steps necessary to actually complete that transaction within the corresponding systems. In this case, starting in S4HANA and then transitioning into Ariba. What you'll find is, at this stage, that's sort of fairly bland and boring because it's actually just generated using a standard SAP template. What you'll find is all of those templates are completely customizable to your fonts, your colors, your logos. You can put header pages on these things. You can put sort of footer pages on these things. You can do all sorts of things to actually generate information from that content that could be easily just passed directly to a user of that content. One last thing that I will actually point out here before I transition to some other things. We're fairly limited on time today, and there's many things I could talk about, but obviously I need to restrict my conversation. If you are going through a project scenario at the moment, or you're about to start a project, perhaps an S4HANA project, and you're thinking about the documentation that needs to be produced for the project. So in a traditional project environment, one group of people will produce training material, a second group of people will produce testing material, and a third group of people, functional consultants, for example, might produce BPP documents. What you'll find is SAP Enable Now will enable you to generate different versions of documents, including a test script version that you could utilize for UAT, which would save you a lot of time and effort in terms of generating that material. In fact, under a standard project environment, you'll actually save so much effort in terms of generating that material that you could actually afford to pay for Enable Now just using the money or the savings from not producing test scripts separately from the material that you use to train your end users. Okay, the last thing in terms of the objects that were actually in that window a moment ago. So we started off, we launched a piece of business process information, and we saw that business process diagram that was produced entirely out of Enable Now. We then launched a simulation, ran that in two modes, demo, practice mode, and then also launched a document version of that information. The last thing I'm going to do before I transition to some other activities is to launch the guided tour. Now, the concept of a guided tour is a guided tour will sit on top of the live application. If you look at the top of the screen, I am still in Internet Explorer here. This is actually sitting on top of the real field in Internet Explorer and is providing me, the end user, with an instruction. In this instance, I'm going to follow that instruction, and in a moment this thing will refresh itself to point to the correct field, and it will now tell me what I must do in the next field. The idea behind a guided tour, and you would not produce guided tours for every scenario that you want to train, but there'll be some key support scenarios within your organization, key scenarios where a large number of people create or perform a particular function, but fairly rarely, for example, and therefore require typically support with doing that. Under those circumstances, something like a guided tour can be used to steer the user through the best practice approach to actually completing that corresponding transaction. Now, in this instance, you'll notice that when it first launches the new step, it actually highlights the old field, and that's because this screen's a little bit unusual for an SAP screen. What it's actually doing is, as I'm answering a question, it's putting additional fields on the screen, and it takes a second for the guided tour to work out where it needs to be, but in the end, it ultimately does refresh, point to the right place, and enable the user to get instruction about what else they need to do to complete the corresponding transaction. As part of this, what you'll actually notice is there's also a list of steps here for the end user. So if the end user was really up to step 12 or 13 or whatever they were up to, what they could do is they could actually just leap straight to that corresponding step, and get the corresponding instruction for that step. So given timing today, what I'll do is I will close that down for a moment because there are some other things on the screen that I would like to move through that are also related to Enable Now. The first of those is this little diagram, this little page that's sitting up in the top right-hand corner. Now, when I open that page up, what you'll notice that it is a little post-it note, and that post-it note is my post-it note. I've created that for myself to enable me to contain or to monitor information about the system that I'm currently working in. So I've got details like a cost center number, a WBS element, a company code, and in this instance, I've also got, for example, and it's not going to work for me because of the display environment, but typically what I would do is edit that and resave it. What I've got is the ability for me to add Shane, in this case, specific information to my post-it note, just pop it aside, put it up there in the corner, and every time I start that corresponding application, so every time in this case I come into S4HANA, my post-it note's available, I can open my post-it note and get the relevant information that I'm looking for. Okay, a couple of other things I would like to go through very briefly. The little question mark that you see on the screen. So the little question mark is a piece of help that's called context help. Using Enable Now, I'm able to attach context help icons to different objects on the screen. In this case, I've attached an icon to that field, and so the icon sits there just directly below the field and provides an instruction. So all I need to do as an end user is mouse over that piece of, that question mark to see what the corresponding information is. The idea behind context help is it provides a means for you, the organization, to communicate to your end users critical information, things that have changed. It's a tool that should be used for communication. So there's more we could talk about that, but again, so many more things to talk about. What I'm going to do is click on one of the other icons that actually appears in the little toolbar. And in this instance, what it's actually done is it's launched into a portal of information. Now, my portal of information is a very poor man's version of what Mirko showed you earlier, the info center. The info center is potentially a way that you can put information or provide a mass of information to end users and enable them, for example, to search for that information or to go ahead and actually browse for information and find the information that they're looking for. So the info center is a way of providing a lot of information that's easy to access, or portals like the info center are a way to provide a lot of information that's easy to access, and it provides an informal way for your users to learn as they need to learn. So that was launched from the tool that we saw there just a moment ago. The last tool that I'm going to talk about on the toolbar is a tool that enables me, the end user, to actually go ahead and record some information. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and record information very briefly just to show you the concept, and then we'll move on to one last thing before we start to close. So in this instance, let's assume for a second that I would like to record some information in PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be an SAP related system that I can record. So the scenario that we're talking about here is you ask the person next to you who knows how to do this particular function in the corresponding system how they do it. In a traditional work environment, you would need to write some instructions down onto a notepad or something and hope that you can find that in a month's time when you need those instructions again, and you could then go ahead and follow the instructions. In this instance, what I'm actually going to do, rather than writing those instructions down, I'm actually going to go ahead and record the instructions myself and then find a way or show you how I could go about accessing those instructions in future. So in this instance, I'm going to record some steps from within, obviously, PowerPoint, again, highlighting the fact that it doesn't have to be an SAP system that we're talking about here. And at that point, I've finished the steps that are relevant within PowerPoint. So I'm going to give a name to that piece of content that I just generated. And Enable Now will now go ahead and actually
capture that information for me and store that information away so that at a later date, again as an end user, when I need those instructions again, I have easy access to those instructions. All right, let's just revert to here because that makes it easy for you to understand what I'm talking about. So when we started that conversation earlier today, we clicked on a light bulb. That was a glowing light bulb. That gave us access to 3 shared pieces of information across the organization. What I've now done is if I click on the little tab that sits next to that tab containing the shared information, I see a person. That person is me. If I click on me, what I can see is I can actually see the demo piece of content that I just created. If I very quickly attempt to launch that just to see what information has been captured for you, you will see that in this circumstance, what I've actually done is I've captured a partial screenshot. There's my step number and it's telling me click on File. It's then telling me click on Options. So there's the Options menu. It's telling me to click on the Customize Ribbon option, followed by deselecting that button and then clicking OK. So I've managed to generate that set of instructions that I can access at any time just by going to that user area and launching that set of instructions, and then I can run through that corresponding set of instructions again. All right, I really do need to wind up, but there's one last thing that I would like to talk about very briefly. So 2 minutes, David, and then I'll hand back to you. So what we've done is we started the conversation by talking about ways that we could provide support to end users when they're outside of a training environment. So they've already done their training, they're in their workplace, they're attempting to perform actions within their workplace and they require support. So we talked about different things that we could actually do to support actual activity, actual work within the work environment. What we're going to look at today is just a very brief example of an e-learning course. And again, this is an entire e-learning course that's been created within Enable Now. As Mirko mentioned earlier, these types of materials are all created with references to templates, so that again, what you can do is key pages like this one that never change can be automatically put into place and make it very simple to go ahead and actually generate these materials. In this instance, you'll actually see that one of the words is highlighted within the text. If I click on that, what I'll actually see is a glossary entry, a definition for that term. So again, what Enable Now enables you to do is to maintain a glossary and automatically apply that glossary to a whole range of text so that terms like that get automatically referenced for you. If I skip through to one of the other pages where there's some sort of other things to talk about which are a little different, what I've actually done in this case is embedded some existing video that was part of the organization. So if I was to play that, it would just go ahead and play that piece of video, but effectively I've taken a piece of existing video and I've embedded into my e-learning course that I could distribute through SCORM, for example, so I can generate it into a SCORM packet using Enable Now, or I could push it directly into SuccessFactors Learning, so it could be consumed within SuccessFactors Learning. In this instance, you'll notice that what we're talking about here is the same process diagram that you saw produced from within the little toolbar on the right-hand side that's called Desktop Assistant. It's exactly the same content. So again, what we're talking about is creating the content once and then making that content available to end users in different ways so that they can consume it in the way that's most relevant to their current needs. In this case, if I was to do it, I'm not going to do it because I am literally out of time. If I was going to do it, what I would do is I could launch a simulation in demo mode, which would be the same simulation that we played earlier in the session. The last thing I'll do before I hand back to David is I will launch a quiz. What you'll find is SAP Enable Now does have quiz capability with approximately 10 or 12 different question types that you can use to create. These are just examples of the 10 or 12 different question types. I don't know. Okay, no, I got that one wrong. But those are examples of it. You can create quizzes that you can make available again to your end users to assess the level of knowledge or to reinforce key learnings from the training that they've undertaken. What I'll do just before I hand back is I'll just put up on the screen there briefly for you some details that you can use to contact me. Obviously, we've had a very limited amount of time to take you through the system today, but if you would like to contact us to organise some more in-depth conversation about Enable Now, happy to either come and do that myself or to arrange the relevant person to be in contact and come out and speak to you. All right, look, thanks very much for your attendance today, and David, I'll hand back to you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Shane, for that. It is exactly 1 hour since we started, so thanks a lot for joining. We will send out the deck of the recording, I should say, in case you have had any troubles, troubles to hear or see the content, or if you just want to share it with a colleague. And then again, I think it's really good to have that email address from Shane. And in case you have any further questions, you can also use the email address that we use to send out the invite. And we will send out the links anyway, so you can contact us that way as well. Again, thanks for joining. Thanks to Mirko to fly out to Australia, and also thanks to Shane to take the time and like to close the call. Thanks a lot.